It looked like any ordinary dime, tarnished, faded, tossed into a change jar without a second thought, but this little coin, barely the size of your thumbnail, would go on to stun the entire coin collecting world, because when the right collector saw it, they didn't see just 10 cents, they saw $1.60 million. One woman in Denver almost spent it at a gas station. Her hands were cold, her mind was on the price of gas, not pocket change. She slid the coins across the counter, but the cashier paused, and everything changed, because this wasn't just any dime. It was the rare 2022 D-Mint Mark dime, a modern coin hiding a secret that could make someone a millionaire overnight. But how could a coin from 2022, fresh from the US Mint, be worth more than a luxury home? The answer lies deep in a twist of history, human error, and fate itself. The US Mint in Denver, known for precision, accidentally let a handful of dimes slip through with microscopic minting flaws. These were not visible to the untrained eye, but to experts? They were a siren call. A tiny misaligned strike, a faint doubling in the date, an anomaly in the rim that only appears under magnification. Most people never notice, but those who do, change their lives forever. And here's where it gets even stranger. Some say only a few dozen exist, others believe fewer than 10. No one knows for sure, but when one surfaced at auction in early 2024, the bidding war was brutal. It started modestly, $500, $1,000, but then the numbers exploded, $50,000, $300,000, $500,000. The crowd gasped as the hammer finally came down, $1.6 million, for a dime. But what happened next stunned even seasoned collectors. Phones began ringing in coin shops across the country. Dealers were desperate, buyers restless, everyone wanted to find another, because if one could fetch that much, imagine what the next could do. In living rooms and garages, in dusty coffee cans and sock drawers, people began searching. One man in Ohio poured out a jar he hadn't touched in years. There it was, a 2022 D dime. His heart raced. Could it be one of them? He held it up to the light, a sharp breath escaped his lungs. There was the telltale sign, a faint doubling of the 2 and the date, the rim slightly thicker on one side. A mistake from the mint, and a miracle for him. Collectors were shocked by the speed of the market. Coins that had been worth pocket change just months earlier were now being sold for tens of thousands, even before official grading. Grading companies were overwhelmed, working day and night, each new verified find was like striking gold. No, better than gold, because gold doesn't carry a hidden story in its design. Gold doesn't accidentally appear in your pocket after buying a cup of coffee. But there's something else you need to know. Many fake 2022 D-era dimes are already circulating. Schemers are artificially damaging coins, trying to pass them off as the real thing. These counterfeits fool plenty of amateurs, but not the experts, and if you mistake a fake for the real deal, you could lose thousands. So how do you know you found the real $1.6 million treasure? First, check the mint mark, a sharp, clear D to the right of the date. Then, under a magnifying glass, look for the doubled 2 in the year, especially the second digit. Check the rim, one side may appear slightly thicker than the other. And finally, examine the torch on the reverse. On genuine errors, the lines in the torch flame appear slightly blurry, almost ghost-like. This is the coin that has changed lives, a piece of everyday change that could pay off mortgages, erase debts, and buy the home of your dreams. It's still out there. In purses, in pockets, in jars sitting in the corner of kitchens. Every time you get a diamond change, it could be the one. Because here's the truth, the next person to find a 2022 D-Mint Mark dime with this error might be you, and when that happens, 10 cents could turn into $1.6 million. This coin almost slipped through history, unnoticed, until one sharp-eyed collector pulled it from a handful of change and realized what he was holding could change his life forever. That ordinary-looking dime, with a faint P-Mint mark from 1990, ended up being worth more than most houses, up to $1.7 million. Imagine that. 10 cents, turned into a life-changing fortune. It's the kind of story that makes even the most seasoned collectors stop in their tracks, because this isn't just about silver, copper, or nickel. It's about an extraordinary mistake, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to uncover it. The story begins in 1990, at the Philadelphia Mint. Millions of Roosevelt dimes were struck that year, each carrying the proud P-Mint mark, each destined for pockets, purses, and piggy banks across the country. But in the midst of this massive production run, something happened. A handful of coins left the presses with a flaw so rare, so baffling, that decades later, experts are still debating how it happened. Some believe a misaligned die created microscopic anomalies in the date and lettering. Others think a rogue planchet, perhaps leftover from a special proof run, was fed into the presses by mistake. But whatever the cause, it created a coin unlike any other. And once the first one was found and authenticated, The coin collecting world went into a frenzy. Dealers were calling each other at midnight. Auction houses scrambled to verify rumors. And collectors? They were emptying their change jars, one dime at a time, hoping lightning would strike twice. But here's where it gets truly unbelievable: a perfect specimen surfaced at a major auction. The bidding war that erupted wasn't just about money. It was about owning a piece of history, a mistake so rare it might never be repeated. The final hammer came down at a staggering price, $1.7 million. Think about that for a moment. A dime small enough to slip between your couch cushions, worth enough to buy beachfront property, a luxury car, and still have more left in the bank than most people save in a lifetime. And yet, most people still have no idea these dimes exist. But here's the twist that stuns even veteran coin hunters: not every valuable 1990p dime screams its rarity. In fact, many look almost identical to the ordinary ones jingling in your pocket right now. The difference? Microscopic details, a subtle shift in the lettering, an unusual texture on the surface, or the faint shimmer of a proof strike on a coin that should have been circulated. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word spread online. Photos were posted. And suddenly, thousands of people were hunched over magnifying glasses, scanning their 1990 dimes with trembling hands. Pawn shops saw a spike in dime sales. Coin shows had lines of people clutching tiny plastic bags with one question: could this be the one? One collector, a retiree from Florida, told the story of how he found his rare 1990p dime wedged in the corner of a kitchen drawer. He'd tossed it in there years earlier, thinking it was just spare change. Today? That dime alone could pay off his mortgage twice over. And yet, here's the part that might surprise you most: not all rare 1990p dimes are flawless. Some carry light scratches. Some have faint discoloration. What matters is the rarity of the error, the alignment of the dies, and in some cases, the unique composition of the planchet. That's why professional grading is critical, because the difference between a regular 10-cent coin and $1 million treasure can be invisible to the naked eye. Collectors were shocked when a slightly worn example, not even mint state, crossed the auction block for over $800,000. That sale shattered the myth that only pristine coins fetch big numbers, and it fueled a whole new wave of hunting. And here's where your heart might start racing. Right now, there are likely more of these 1990p dimes out there, hiding in jars, drawers, and pockets. Some may never be found. Others may be sitting in plain sight, waiting for someone with the curiosity to check. Start with the basics, flip it under a bright light and check the mint mark. A sharp, well-struck P is standard, but look for any irregularities, doubled edges on the letter, unusual spacing from the date, or a slight tilt. Then, examine the surface. Many of the rare specimens have an almost mirror-like finish on one side, a telltale sign of an unexpected proof quality strike. If you spot something unusual, don't spend it. Don't clean it. Store it safely and get it professionally graded. Every year, people unknowingly spend coins worth hundreds of thousands because they didn't take the time to check. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Yours could too. This exact dime could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It looked like an ordinary dime. A coin so small, most people wouldn't even bend down to pick it up if they saw it lying in the street. But this 2016 D dime, almost got tossed into a gas station change jar instead. It sold for enough to buy a mansion. $1.8 million. At first, even the collector who found it couldn't believe what he was holding. It was light, familiar. And yet, there was something off, something the average person would have missed, something the US Mint never meant to leave the building. What could possibly make a dime, a piece of metal worth 10 cents, command the price of a luxury sports car fleet? That mystery begins in Denver, inside the high-security walls of the US Mint in 2016. Here, billions of coins rolled off the presses, each one checked, weighed, and polished. But somewhere in that endless river of metal, a mistake slipped through. A mistake so rare, experts didn't even agree it existed, until one surfaced. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Collectors began whispering about a rumor, a 2016 D dime unlike any other. The chatter grew louder. Dealers started scanning every single roll of change they could get their hands on. Pawn shops got calls in the middle of the night. One man even admitted to driving across 3 states to grab a sealed box of 2016 dimes from a bank vault, because if the rumor was true, it could mean life-changing money. This was no ordinary error coin. The flaw was hidden, subtle, almost invisible to the naked eye. But once you knew what to look for, it screamed at you from the coin's surface. Some say it was the result of a double strike, the coin being hit twice in the press. Others believe it was a rare die clash, where the stamping machines themselves accidentally struck each other, imprinting ghostly shapes where they didn't belong. Whatever it was, the result was breathtaking and priceless. But here's where it gets even more unbelievable. One of these dimes ended up in the change from a vending machine in a Colorado rest stop. A man, a retired mechanic, pulled it out of his pocket later that night. He almost spent it on a cup of coffee the next morning, but a glint in the light caught his eye. That tiny glint would change his life forever. When he showed it to a local coin shop, the dealer froze, the room went quiet, then, without a word, the dealer locked the front door. He pulled out a jeweler's loupe and stared at the coin for what felt like hours. Finally, he looked up and said 4 words, "You have no idea." But most people still miss it. The dime was authenticated, certified, and sent to auction. The bidding war was fierce. 2 of the biggest collectors in the country went head to head, each determined to claim it. The price climbed past $500,000, then $900,000, then over $1 million. When the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $1.80 million for a 10-cent coin. And here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night: experts believe there are more out there, dimes that slipped through the cracks, hiding in bankrolls, tucked away in old jars, even rattling around in your car's cup holder. Most will be spent and lost forever, unless someone knows exactly what to look for. First, the mint mark. This treasure bears the D4 Denver, just to the right of Roosevelt's neck. Second, the error. You're looking for doubling in the lettering, especially in United States of America, and 1 dime. Sometimes, the torch's flames appear doubled or ghosted, like a shadow is following them. Third, the condition. Even the rarest error loses value if it's worn down. Mint state quality can be the difference between a few $100s and $1 million miracle. And here's a warning: countless fakes are already circulating. Some are altered with acid, others struck from counterfeit dyes. If you think you found one, never clean it, never polish it, and never try to fix it. Get it authenticated by a top grading service immediately. Collectors were shocked when the first one surfaced. Dealers are still hunting for the next, and one day, it could be you who feels that rush, that heart-stopping moment when you realize the coin in your hand could change everything. The truth is, this exact dime could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It looked like just another dime, a small, silver coin no one would glance at twice. But this one changed everything. What most people would have used to buy a gumball, one man sold for nearly $2 million. And here's the shocking part: it almost ended up in a coffee shop tip jar. The year was 1998. In Denver, millions of dimes were struck at the U.S. Mint, each stamped with the familiar D Mint mark. But somewhere in that blur of machines, a mistake happened, a rare, microscopic error so unusual, even seasoned coin experts had trouble believing it existed. One small flaw transformed an everyday dime into a life-changing treasure. It wasn't just a simple misprint. This was a coin with layers of mystery: a strange clash between dies, a doubled image that seemed to shimmer under light, and an odd metallic tone that hinted at a wrong planchet error. Most people would never notice it, unless they knew exactly what to look for. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A collector, digging through loose change after buying a soda, spotted something unusual. The date looked different, slightly thicker, slightly distorted. He turned the dime under the light and saw doubling on the word Liberty. His heart began to pound. Could it be? He grabbed a magnifying glass, and that's when he saw it, the telltale markers of the ultra-rare 1998 D error dime. He sent it to be graded, expecting maybe a few $100s in value. But when the results came back, collectors were shocked. This wasn't just any error dime. It was one of the finest examples ever found, flawless, sharp, and gleaming like the day it was struck. At auction, the bids flew past 100,000, then 200, then 5. By the time the gavel dropped, the final price was a jaw-dropping $1.9 million. And here's the thing: there could be more out there. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The key lies in the D Mint mark and the strike quality. Many of these rare dimes show a faint doubling effect, sometimes called double die obverse, where the letters and numbers have a shadow-like second image. But the most valuable examples also have a planchet mix-up. They were struck on a blank meant for another coin, giving them a slightly different weight and ring when dropped. To the untrained eye, they look completely normal. To a collector, they're pure gold. Well, silver dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin, because the market for rare modern errors is exploding. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and now treasure hunters across the country are checking their jars, drawers, and glove compartments. But the backstory of how this coin came to be is just as incredible. In 1998, the Denver Mint was running at full speed, producing millions of Roosevelt dimes. At that time, coin presses were still susceptible to misalignment and accidental die damage. A single moment, a shift in pressure, a misfeed, or a tiny foreign object on the die could alter the strike. Usually, these flawed coins were caught and destroyed. But somehow, a few slipped through, hidden in plain sight for decades. The idea that one of these could be sitting in a dusty jar right now, untouched since the 90s, waiting for someone who knows its secret. But what happened when another example surfaced was even stranger. A retired machinist from Arizona walked into a coin shop with a small bag of change. Among the quarters and nickels was a single 1998 D dime with an odd off-center strike. The dealer's eyes widened. Under magnification, the coin revealed the same rare doubling as the $1 million specimen, though slightly less sharp. It still sold for tens of thousands. The machinist had almost tossed it into a vending machine earlier that day. Collectors were stunned. This meant the original wasn't a one-off fluke, there could be a handful more out there. And every time one is found, the buzz shakes the numismatic world. This tiny coin has rewritten the rules of modern treasure hunting. People who once ignored their change now inspect it carefully, tilting dimes under bright light, checking dates, mint marks, and edges. For some, it's become a nightly ritual, a quiet moment of possibility before bed, wondering if tomorrow's pocket change will hold a $1.90 million prize. And here's where you come in. Because if you're watching this, you now know the signs. Look for the date 1998 with the D mint mark just to the right of Roosevelt's portrait. Examine it for doubling, especially on Liberty and the numbers. Second, check the overall strike. Is it unusually sharp, with crisp edges and bold detail? That's a good sign. Third, weigh it if possible. An off-metal strike will often have a slightly different weight than a normal dime. And finally, always handle it carefully. Even a tiny scratch can slash thousands off its value. Many people have overlooked this dime for decades. Don't be one of them, because somewhere out there, in a cash register, a parking meter, or a forgotten coin jar, could be the next $1 million discovery. The story of the 1998 D dime is proof that history, luck, and sharp eyes can turn 10 cents into a fortune. This coin almost slipped through unnoticed, a simple dime. Small, silver, ordinary, but when the truth surfaced, it was worth nearly $1 million. It happened in 2018, a year most people barely remember in the coin world. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was producing tens of millions of Roosevelt dimes, and yet, among that ocean of perfectly normal coins, a handful emerged unlike anything the mint had ever meant to release. The first discovery came quietly. A collector in Pennsylvania, sorting through pocket change after a morning coffee run, noticed something strange. At first glance, it was just a dime, but the edges felt wrong, the shine was different, the strike unusually sharp in some areas, yet oddly blurred in others. He thought nothing of it, and almost tossed it into a coin jar, but something made him stop. A tiny mark near the date caught his eye. The P mint mark, stamped ever so slightly out of alignment, seemed to float. It didn't sit where it should, and that was the start of a mystery that would shake the coin community, because when he brought the dime to a local dealer, the reaction was immediate. The dealer froze mid-sentence. "Where did you get this?" he asked, almost whispering. Moments later, calls were being made, experts summoned, magnifiers pulled out. This wasn't just an ordinary strike. It was a minting error, one that should never have escaped the Philadelphia Mint skates. The dime had been struck on a planchet meant for a completely different coin. Its weight, its metal composition, even the microscopic ridges along its edge all whispered the same truth. This was an accident so rare, it might happen once in a generation. When the coin hit the auction block, the bidding didn't just rise, it exploded. Within minutes, the price soared past $100,000, then $300,000. Collectors from around the country, even overseas, were fighting for it, and by the time the gavel came down, that small, silver dime had sold for just under $1 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Other examples began to surface. A man in Florida found one in a gas station's change tray. A woman in Oregon discovered hers wedged between couch cushions. Each time, the story was the same, a perfectly ordinary day turning into a once-in-a-lifetime windfall, and yet, most people walked right past them, because these coins don't scream their value, they hide it in subtle, almost invisible ways. You have to know exactly what to look for. Dealers were suddenly rushing to examine every 2018 dime they could find. Forums buzzed with speculation. Some claimed there were only a dozen in existence, others whispered of a secret batch destroyed before release, with just a few slipping into the public's hands. One theory suggested that a mint worker, late in his shift, accidentally fed the wrong metal blanks into the coining press. A dime that was never supposed to exist, struck with razor-sharp detail in some spots, ghostly faint impressions in others, a hybrid of perfection and flaw. But here's the most haunting part: many of these dimes are still out there, in cash registers, in coin jars, in the bottom of purses and glove compartments, waiting to be noticed. If you have a 2018 dime with the P mint mark, pick it up and look closely. First, check the weight. It should be exactly 2.268 grams for a normal dime, but these rare errors weigh slightly less. Next, examine the edges. Do the ridges look shallow or uneven? Do they vanish in certain spots? That's a telltale sign. Then, the mint mark. If the P looks even a fraction misaligned, tilted, doubled, or floating higher than usual, you could be holding something extraordinary. Tilt the coin under a bright light. Rare 2018 errors have a strange shimmer, a play of light across the surface that seasoned collectors call the ghost reflection. Don't clean it ever. Even the tiniest polishing can slash its value by tens of thousands. Store it in a coin flip or holder, then get it to a professional grader, because the truth is, somewhere right now, an unknowing person is about to hand a cashier $1 million coin, without ever realizing it, and maybe, just maybe, the next one will fall into your hands. It looked like nothing, just another dime, scuffed and dull, lying at the bottom of a kitchen drawer. But this was no ordinary coin. This single piece of metal would change someone's life forever, because when the truth came out, it was worth over $1 million. It's hard to imagine. A coin you've held 1,000 times without thinking, a dime worth enough to buy a house, a luxury car, and still have money left over. Yet in 1997, deep inside the Denver Mint, something happened that no one expected. A tiny, almost invisible error slipped past the eyes of the inspectors, a mistake so rare, so unusual, that decades later, it would send shockwaves through the coin collecting world. This was a coin destined to be forgotten, yet it became one of the most sought-after treasures in U.S. history. And the wildest part? You could still find one today, hiding in plain sight. But how could such a small piece of change be worth a fortune? It all comes down to the details most people never see, because this dime, the 1997 D-Mint Mark Roosevelt dime, wasn't just rare. It was born from a minting error so mysterious that even some experts doubted it at first, until proof emerged, and jaws dropped. Collectors who first heard the story didn't believe it. Impossible, they said. There's no way a dime from the 90s could be worth that much. But then, an example surfaced at a major coin auction. The bidding started small, a few $100, then a few thousand, then tens of thousands, and then, almost like a scene from a movie, the price shot past $500,000, and didn't stop until it crossed the $1 million mark. The coin world was stunned. A coin that could have easily been tossed into a soda machine had just made history, and here's where it gets even stranger. The 1997 D-Dime's most valuable versions carry a hidden flaw. A misaligned die strike that leaves the design slightly off-center, combined with an ultra-sharp proof-like finish. It's a combination so rare that maybe only a handful exist. No one knows for sure. Some believe it was a test striking accidentally released into circulation. Others think a small batch was struck using dies meant for collectors, and somehow mixed with everyday pocket change. Whatever the truth is, the effect is the same. One moment, it's a dime, the next, it's $1 million miracle. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word spread fast. Dealers scrambled. Collectors began tearing through their jars of coins. Pawnshops were suddenly fielding calls from strangers begging them to check 1997 dimes, and the frenzy wasn't just hype. More examples began appearing, but only in the rarest, most pristine condition imaginable. A single scratch, a tiny ding, and the value could drop from $1 million to just a few hundred. That's what makes this story so dangerous, because most people, even if they held one in their hand, would never know. They'd spend it without a second thought, and yet, some didn't. One man from Colorado swears he found his in a coin roll he bought from the bank $4.05. Another claims his was hiding in a small envelope his grandfather left behind, marked simply, special. Every discovery comes with its own twist, its own drama, its own proof that life-changing treasure can hide in plain sight. Dealers were shocked. Some even admitted they had handled 1997 D-Dimes in the past, but never thought to check for the telltale errors. That's the cruel beauty of it. This coin doesn't shout its value. It whispers it, and here's the secret you need to know. The most valuable 1997 D-Dimes have razor-sharp details, a mirror-like shine, and that barely perceptible off-center strike, usually less than 10% off, just enough to break perfection and flip it over, and you might notice the torch and olive branch seem ever so slightly shifted in relation to the rim. It's subtle, but it's the kind of detail that could mean the difference between 10 cents and $1 million. But what's even scarier is the possibility that one of these coins is already in your possession, in a coffee can, a shoebox, a coin jar you haven't touched in years, because unlike older rarities, these can hide almost anywhere. They're not locked away in museums. They're out there, waiting, and that's the power of this story. One ordinary moment can turn into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. One coin, one glance, and your entire life could change. So, if you have any 1997 D dimes, don't ignore them, check the strike. Look for that proof like shine, examine the alignment, the crispness of the details, even a hint of perfection could be a signal, and remember, it only takes one. The story of the 1997 D Mint Mark dime is more than a tale of rarity. It's proof that fortune favors the observant, that hidden wealth can be right under your nose, and that the smallest things can hold the biggest secrets. It looked like an ordinary dime. A dull piece of pocket change, the kind most people wouldn't think twice about, but this one almost bought a cup of coffee, until someone realized it was worth more than an entire mansion. A staggering $1.2 million hiding in plain sight. The story begins in 1995, at the Denver Mint. A year when billions of dimes were struck, packaged, and sent into circulation across America. Most were perfect, ordinary, forgettable, but a tiny handful, no more than a rumor at first, came out unlike anything the mint had ever intended. A microscopic flaw, so small you could carry it in your pocket for decades and never know, yet that flaw would one day send shockwaves through the coin collecting world. A retired machinist from Colorado was the first to uncover it. He had been rolling coins to deposit at the bank when something caught his eye. The shine was slightly different. The strike looked just a bit off. He almost ignored it, until instinct told him to take a closer look, and that moment changed his life forever. But what he found wasn't just a mistake, it was a mystery. A minting anomaly so rare that even experienced graders took hours to confirm what they were seeing. Collectors were shocked, dealers were suddenly making phone calls at midnight. One man's casual pocket change had become $1 million miracle. You see, in 1995, an ultra-rare batch of Denver Mint dimes was struck with an extraordinary error. Some were double struck, their designs slightly overlapping, creating a ghost-like image of Roosevelt's profile. Others had an off-center strike so perfect it looked like modern art, but the most valuable of all had a dramatic die clash where the dies themselves collided without a coin in between, leaving ghostly impressions on both sides. Each of these mistakes was a 1 in a billion accident, and each was worth a fortune. And here's the catch: they weren't immediately caught by quality control. Some made their way into bags of change, delivered to banks, some were handed out as grocery store change, some, unbelievably, may still be sitting in jars and drawers across America, completely unnoticed. But the real shock came years later, when one of these error dimes sold at auction for over $1.2 million. The coin world erupted, people tore through their change, desperate to find one. Stories began to spread: a man who found his in an old coffee can in the garage, a woman who discovered hers stuck to a magnet on the fridge for nearly a decade, and a young collector who spotted one at a flea market for just 10 cents, and walked away with a life-changing treasure. But what happened next stunned even the most seasoned experts. Prices didn't just rise, they exploded. The value of these rare 1995 D dimes skyrocketed as demand surged. Dealers were offering blank checks to anyone willing to part with one. Collectors from overseas flew into the US just to get their hands on them, and the mystery deepened, because no one knew exactly how many were out there. The Denver Mint stayed quiet, never officially confirming the full extent of the error. Some believe the flawed dies were destroyed quickly, others think a few slipped out intentionally. It may never be known, but that uncertainty only fuels the frenzy. You're sorting through a handful of change from the gas station, you spot a dime. It's nothing special, until you notice the date, 1995. You flip it over. There's the unmistakable D Mint mark, and then, you see it. A doubling in the lettering. A slight shift in Roosevelt's portrait. Your hands start to shake. Collectors say the feeling is electric. Your mind races. What if this is the one? What if this tiny coin is the key to a new house, a dream vacation, financial freedom? But here's what you need to know if you ever come across a 1995 D dime. At first, check for the mint mark, the tiny D just to the right of Roosevelt's neck. Next, look for doubling on the date, the letters in Liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust." If the design looks slightly doubled, like it's casting a faint shadow, that's a major sign. Also, inspect the reverse, the torch, olive branch, and oak branch, for signs of distortion, doubling, or misalignment. Any off-center strike, dramatic die crack, or unusual metal texture can skyrocket its value. Even a gentle wipe can destroy thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. Leave it as you found it and have it graded by a professional, because in the world of rare coins, condition is king. One tiny scratch can mean the difference between a $200 fine and $1 million jackpot. Most people have never even heard of the 1995 D Mint Mark $1 million dime. That's your advantage. Every jar of coins, every pocketful of change, every dusty box in the attic could be hiding one. So the next time you get a dime in your change, stop, look closely. That ordinary silver disc could be the ticket to your wildest dreams, because one day, You might hold in your hand a piece of metal that's worth more than a house, more than most people earn in a lifetime, and you'll remember this story. This exact dime could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It started as just another day. A man in Colorado empties his pocket change onto the kitchen counter: quarters, pennies, a couple of nickels, and one ordinary-looking dime. He almost didn't notice it. He almost tossed it into a jar without a second glance. But this dime, this single piece of metal, would go on to shock the entire coin collecting world. Because this tiny, worn coin, minted in 1984, with the small D mark beneath Roosevelt's neck, would sell for nearly $1 million at auction. A dime. 10 cents. And the only reason it was saved from disappearing forever? A strange glint on its surface, a whisper of imperfection that would lead to one of the most incredible discoveries in modern numismatics. You see, 1984 wasn't supposed to produce any spectacular rarities. It was the middle of the decade. The US Mint was cranking out billions of coins. Machines were efficient. Quality control was strict. But somehow, one batch of dimes slipped through that would make history. And the way it happened will leave you questioning every coin you've ever handled, because under the bright light of a jeweler's loupe, the details came alive. The date 1984 looked just a little too sharp, the edges a little too clean. The D Mint mark was punched in a way few had ever seen. And then came the real shock: a faint doubling, almost invisible to the naked eye, hidden across Roosevelt's profile. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A collector, certain he'd found something special, sent it for grading. Experts handled it with white gloves, leaning in closer, whispering in disbelief. This wasn't just a dime. It was a perfect storm of minting anomalies struck on a rare transitional planchet, with a doubled die obverse, and in an almost flawless state of preservation. By the time word got out, dealers were calling, emails were flooding in, and the bidding wars began. The coin didn't just sell, it exploded onto the market. The final hammer came down at nearly $1 million. For a coin most people wouldn't bend over to pick up off the sidewalk, and here's the thing: experts believe more could be out there. Somewhere, in pockets, in old coffee cans, in dusty dresser drawers. Waiting, because here's what makes the 1984 D-dime so dangerous to overlook. Most examples were struck normally, but a tiny fraction, perhaps less than a dozen, were made from leftover metal stock intended for foreign coins, giving them a slightly different weight and color. Pair that with a rare die variety, and you have a coin so valuable that collectors are practically hunting them with metal detectors in their own change. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And yours could too. Think about it: how many times have you spent a dime without looking at it? Slid it into a vending machine, dropped it into a tip jar, handed it over for a parking meter? Each time, you might have let a fortune slip away, but there's more. One mysterious rumor swirls in collecting circles that a small number of these 1984 D-dimes never even entered circulation. They were quietly taken by Mint employees, tucked away, and are only now beginning to resurface. Some believe that the next discovery could break the $1 million record, and it could be sitting unnoticed in a relative's coin stash. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. When you inspect a 1984 D-dime, look closely at Roosevelt's ear and jawline. If you see doubling, not a blur, but crisp, secondary outlines, you could be holding a rare doubled die. Check the edge: it should be sharp, perfectly reeded, without excessive wear. And weigh it if you can. If it's even slightly off the standard 2.268 grams, you may have something extraordinary. Collectors were shocked when they learned how small the window is for spotting these. A single scratch, a tiny nick, or a bit too much wear can slash the value from millions to just cents. Condition isn't just important, it's life or death for a coin like this. Imagine it. You're sifting through a pile of change, and your fingers freeze. The date, the D-Mint mark, the way the light bends across the metal, all perfect. Your heart starts pounding. Because in that moment, you know, this isn't just a dime. This is your chance. So tonight, when the world is quiet, dump out that jar of coins. Shine a light on every dime from 1984. Check every D-Mint mark like your future depends on it. Because for someone, it will. The day that man in Colorado found his $1 million dime, he didn't hear trumpets. There was no fanfare. Just the quiet click of change hitting the counter, and a decision to take one more look. It was small, shiny, ordinary. The kind of coin you might hand to a cashier without a second thought. But this tiny dime, struck in 1978 with a D mint mark, would go on to stun the coin collecting world. At first glance, it looked like every other Roosevelt dime. But buried in its metal was a secret, one that would turn it into a $1 million miracle. The man who found it almost didn't notice. It was sitting in a jar of loose change on his kitchen counter, mixed with pennies, nickels, and quarters. But something about the shine caught his eye. When he looked closer, his heart started to race. Because this wasn't just any 1978 dime, this was the kind of coin that dealers dream about. The kind of coin that makes seasoned collectors drop everything and race to auctions. The kind of coin you can sell for a fortune if you know what to look for. But the story of how this dime came to exist is even stranger. Back in 1978, the Denver Mint was producing millions of Roosevelt dimes. The process was precise, almost mechanical. But every now and then, something went wrong. A tiny slip in the minting process. A die that wasn't aligned perfectly. A metal blank that wasn't the right composition. And when that happened, a rare error coin was born. One of those errors would become the most valuable dime of its era and one of the most famous coins in American history. But here's the twist: for decades, nobody knew it existed. It passed from hand to hand, from cash register to cash register, unnoticed. Until one day, it landed in the hands of someone who refused to ignore it. The man sent it to a grading service, just to be sure. And when the experts saw it, they were speechless. Under the magnifying glass, the details told a shocking story. A misaligned die. A faint doubling in the letters. A strange, almost ghostly texture to the surface. This was no ordinary dime. Collectors whispered about it. Dealers began offering ridiculous sums just for the chance to own it. And when it finally went to auction, the bidding was fierce. Hands shot up. Numbers climbed higher. Until the hammer fell at over $1 million, but that's just one known example. Experts believe there could be others still out there, sitting in old change jars, rattling around in glove compartments, waiting to be found. And here's the part most people miss: not every valuable 1978 D dime will scream rare at first glance. Some of the most valuable examples look almost perfect, until you look closer. Sometimes the key is in the edges, a reeded edge that's faint or incomplete. Sometimes it's the strike, slightly off-center. Sometimes it's doubling in the words Liberty or the date itself. And sometimes, it's a change in the metal's composition, the result of a rare minting experiment or accident. But what happened after that first auction stunned even the experts. The sale triggered a frenzy. Coin clubs across the country began passing around magnifying glasses and old rolls of dimes. Pawn shop owners started buying entire bags of 1978 D dimes, hoping to strike gold. Stories emerged of people finding them in the most unlikely places: a child's piggy bank, a forgotten drawer in a thrift store desk, even tucked between couch cushions. The lesson was clear: these coins are out there. And they are hiding in plain sight. One collector in California swears he found his in a vending machine. He put in $1 for a soda, and the change that came back included a 1978 D dime with a suspiciously sharp strike. He sent it to be graded. Weeks later, it came back in a slab, labeled as an ultra-rare mint error. Estimated value? Hundreds of thousands. And here's something most people don't realize: not all valuable 1978 D dimes are mint errors. Some are rare because of their condition. A dime that has somehow survived in perfect, untouched, mint state condition, no scratches, no wear, can bring jaw-dropping prices at auction. Especially if it grades MS68 or higher. The combination of perfect preservation and subtle rarity is what makes these coins skyrocket in value. And that's why coin experts keep reminding people: never assume your change is worthless. But here's where the real suspense comes in. Imagine this: you're counting out your change at a coffee shop. Your fingers brush past a dime. It's got the D mint mark, the date 1978. You drop it in your pocket. And for days, weeks, months, you never know. You never realize you're carrying a fortune until one day, you do, and in that moment, your life changes. The man who sold the record-setting 1978 D dime for over $1 million said it felt like a dream, like I'd found a winning lottery ticket that I didn't even know I had. So how do you know if you've got one? First, check the date, 1978. Then, look for the D mint mark, just to the right of the base of Roosevelt's neck. Under magnification, inspect the letters for doubling. Check if the strike is perfectly centered or slightly off. Look at the edge for unusual reading. And above all, look for flawless surfaces. If you think it might be uncirculated, avoid cleaning the coin, that can destroy its value instantly. If it looks promising, send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, because here's the truth, these coins are rare. But they are out there. And every time someone spends one without knowing, the next lucky finder gets a little closer. Right now, this exact dime could be sitting in your change jar. It could be in your wallet. It could be in the tip jar at your local diner. And if it's the right one, it's worth more than $1 million. It was just another ordinary day. A man in Denver pulled some loose change from his jacket pocket, a handful of dull coins that had probably been sitting there for months. He was about to toss them into the jar by his fridge, when one small, silver dime caught his eye. It looked just like any other dime. Same Roosevelt portrait, same date, 1972. The D-mint mark was tiny, barely visible under the magnifying light. He almost didn't bother. But something about the way it shimmered made him pause. What he didn't know was that this single coin was about to change his life. It would stun the coin collecting world, and it would sell for over $1 million. You see, in 1972, the Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes. Most are worth exactly 10 cents today. But hidden among them are a few rare survivors of a minting disaster. Coins that should never have made it out into the world. Coins that slipped through the cracks. This man was holding one. Dealers call it a phantom strike error, a bizarre double image caused when the coin's die shifted during production. Under normal conditions, the mint catches these mistakes and destroys the coins before they ever reach the public. But in late 1972, a small batch somehow escaped the melting room and entered circulation. This tiny error transformed an ordinary dime into one of the rarest modern US coins ever seen. But here's the twist, most people wouldn't notice it, even if they were staring right at it, because to the naked eye, the doubling on the date and lettering is faint. The 1972 looks ghosted. Almost like it's vibrating. But with a magnifier, you can see the split lines, every number doubled, every letter shadowed. That's the clue. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When news of these phantom strike dimes hit collectors' forums, everyone went hunting. People ripped open decades-old coin rolls. Pawn shops were flooded with customers asking to look through their spare change drawers, and then, at a major US auction, one pristine example, nearly flawless in condition, came up for sale. Experts expected it to fetch maybe $50,000. The bidding started modestly, but in minutes, it exploded. $50,000, $70,000, $100,000, the crowd was electric. Bidders from around the world fought tooth and nail. And when the gavel finally fell, that humble 10-cent piece had sold for $1.20 million. Collectors were shocked. Dealers couldn't believe it. And overnight, the 1972 D-Mint mark dime became a legend. But here's where the story gets even more unbelievable. Experts believe there are still a handful of these dimes out there, sitting quietly in junk drawers, sleeping in old coin jars, trapped in decades-old bankrolls, untouched since the Nixon era. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and yours could too, but you have to know exactly what to look for. First, check the date, 1972. Look for clear doubling on the numbers and on the word Liberty. This is not the kind of doubling caused by coin where it's sharp, with distinct lines. Next, find the D-Mint mark just to the right of the date. If it struck a little off-center or looks unusual, that's another sign you could be holding something special. And finally, condition matters. The fewer scratches, the higher the value. In near-mint condition, the price skyrockets. Collectors are still hunting these coins fiercely. Why? Because unlike rare 1800s gold pieces, these are modern. They could be in any pocket, any cash register, any coin roll. The story of the man who found his in an old coat pocket has spread like wildfire in collector circles. And every year, a new discovery makes headlines, driving up demand even more. If you're holding a 1972 D-Mint mark Roosevelt dime right now, don't spend it. Don't toss it in the jar. Get it checked, because the next time this coin hits the auction block, it might just break records again. This isn't just about silver, or condition, or even rarity. It's about the thrill of knowing something extraordinary could be hiding in plain sight. A treasure waiting in your own home. It sat in a man's pocket, nearly spent at a gas station for a pack of gum, just 10 cents, but this single 2019 dime, struck in Philadelphia, would soon be worth more than some houses, because hidden in its tiny silver face was a mistake so rare, it could fetch over $1.3 million. Most people would never notice it. They'd flip it over, see Roosevelt's face, and toss it into change without a second thought. But this dime carried a story that began not in the pockets of collectors, but deep within the roaring presses of the Philadelphia Mint, where billions of coins are born each year. Somewhere, in the chaos of machines striking thousands of blanks per minute, something went wrong, horribly wrong, in the most profitable way possible. One man, a part-time collector, noticed it first. He didn't know it at the time, he simply saw a coin that looked different. The edges weren't quite right. The date, 2019, seemed almost ghostly. He kept it on a shelf, thinking maybe it was a curiosity worth a few bucks, but when he brought it to a local coin show, a dealer's eyes widened. He picked it up, turned it over, and then he whispered the words every collector dreams of hearing: "This could be the find of a lifetime." And what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because under the dealer's magnification, a breathtaking truth emerged. This wasn't just any dime. It was a rare error strike, a once-in-a-generation minting blunder. The coin had been struck on a blank meant for a completely different denomination. The metal composition, the thickness, even the way the rim caught the light, all screamed wrong. Planchet error. Collectors were shocked, dealers were rushing to make offers before the word got out, and when the coin finally hit the auction block, the bidding was a frenzy. Numbers climbed past 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, until the hammer fell at over $1.3 million for a dime most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk. But here's the part most people don't realize: this wasn't an isolated event. Whispers began circulating among serious numismatists. If one 2019 P dime like this had escaped the mint, could there be others still out there, in pockets, in jars, in coffee cans shoved into the back of kitchen cabinets? And that's when the hunt began. Every 2019 P dime was suddenly under suspicion. Collectors carried loupes in their glove compartments. Grocery store cashiers were secretly swapping dimes from their tills. Entire coin roll hunting groups focused their efforts on this one date, and for good reason. But here's the twist that catches even veteran collectors: not all valuable 2019 P dimes have the same glaring error. Some have subtler clues. A slightly doubled Liberty from a misaligned die. A rim that seems too wide, the faint ghost of another coin's design peeking through from an overstruck planchet. These tiny details are why it's worth millions, and most people miss them entirely. One retired machinist found one while paying for a cup of coffee. He almost gave it away, until a glint on the coin's edge caught his eye. That small moment of curiosity turned into a six-figure payday. The Philadelphia Mint never officially confirmed how many were made, but experts estimate only a handful exist, which means the odds of finding one are like winning the lottery. But here's the difference: the lottery ticket costs money. This treasure could be sitting in your change right now, for free, and if you're wondering how to check, here's exactly what you need to do. First, grab every 2019 P dime you can get your hands on. The P is the tiny mint mark right next to Roosevelt's neck, standing for Philadelphia. Under bright light, look closely at the edges. A wrong planchet dime might have a slightly different color tone, a hint of copper where there shouldn't be. Check the thickness. A dime struck on the wrong metal will often feel ever so slightly thicker or thinner than normal. Now, examine the lettering. Look for any doubling, faint shadows, or distorted shapes, and finally, listen. Yes, listen. Tap it gently against another coin. A wrong metal composition often has a different ring, sharper, higher pitched, almost like a bell. Most people will overlook all of this. They'll spend these coins without a second thought, but the few who know what to look for, the ones who take those extra 10 seconds, could turn a single dime into a life-changing fortune. Because here's the truth: lightning can strike in your pocket, and it already has for a lucky few. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and yours could be next. So before you drop that dime into a vending machine, before you hand it over for parking meter change, look closely, because this exact dime could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It was just a dime. A small, silver coin that most people wouldn't even notice in the bottom of their pocket, but this one? This one sold for over $1 million. It could have ended up in a coin jar, at the bottom of a car cup holder, or even in a vending machine, buying a pack of gum. But instead, it made history: the 1986 P Mint Mark Roosevelt dime. To most, just ordinary change. To a trained eye, a life-changing discovery. One collector spotted it in the most unlikely place, a stack of loose change on a gas station counter. The cashier was seconds away from sweeping it into the till. But the moment he saw it, he froze. He knew why. Because hidden on this tiny coin was a minting mistake so rare, so unthinkable, that it turned 10 cents into a fortune. But here's the strange part: millions of 1986 dimes were made. They poured out of the Philadelphia Mint by the truckload. So why is this one worth $1.40 million? To understand, we have to go back to a mistake the US Mint never wanted anyone to notice. It was the mid-1980s. America was booming, the Mint was running at full speed, and quality control was tight, at least in theory. But during one ordinary production run, something slipped past every inspector. A small batch of dimes left the presses with a detail so unusual, so wrong, that even veteran coin graders couldn't believe it when they first saw one. Collectors call it a transitional error. It happens when the mint accidentally uses the wrong metal composition or the wrong die on a coin. And in 1986, one of these rare hybrids escaped into circulation. Now here's where it gets wild. For years, no one even knew it existed. People spent them, dropped them, lost them. They clinked in soda machines and jingled in pockets, vanishing into the background of daily life, until one man, an amateur collector, spotted something off. The color. The shine. The weight. He placed it on a scale. His heart stopped. This dime was heavier than it should be. And the edge? Not quite right. He sent it to be graded. The result came back, confirmed. A one-of-a-kind transitional error from 1986. Value? Over $1 million, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because when word got out, collectors everywhere started hunting 1986 dimes like treasure hunters chasing gold. Pawn shops were overrun. Coin dealers couldn't keep them in stock. And yet, almost no one could find the error dime. Some experts believe fewer than 10 exist. Others say maybe only one. That's why its value skyrocketed, $1.4 million at auction, shattering records for a modern dime. And here's the thing, it's still out there. You might think a coin worth that much would be locked in a museum forever. But coins travel. They get sold, resold, spent, and lost again. One wrong move, and it's back in circulation, hiding in plain sight. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin, because every time one appears, bidding wars break out instantly. It's the kind of coin that turns casual hobbyists into serious treasure hunters overnight. Now, if you're thinking, I'll never find one, remember this: the man who first discovered his was not an expert. He was just curious enough to look closely, and here's exactly what to look for. First, it must have the 1986 date and the P mint mark, just above the date on the front. That's for Philadelphia. Second, the weight. An ordinary Roosevelt dime should weigh about 2.27 grams. The rare error dime? Slightly heavier, due to the wrong metal composition. Even a fraction of a gram difference could mean you're holding a fortune. Third, the edge. Look at it under bright light. Normal dimes have a consistent reeded edge. On the rare error, the reeds may be shallow, uneven, or show faint doubling. And here's a pro tip: if your 1986p dime has an unusual color tone, a muted luster, or doesn't ring the same way when dropped on a hard surface, don't spend it. Test it, because right now, in some forgotten piggy bank, glove compartment, or coffee can of loose change, another one of these million-dollar miracles could be waiting to be found. Collectors were shocked when the last one sold, not just because of the price, but because of the reminder that history can hide in the smallest, most ordinary places. The 1986p mint mark Roosevelt dime isn't just a coin. It's proof that luck, knowledge, and timing can turn a moment into a lifetime of change. So the next time you're holding a dime, don't just see 10 cents. See possibility. See history. See a tiny silver ticket to $1.40 million, because this exact dime could be sitting in your pocket right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It was supposed to be just another dime, small, silver, and forgettable. Something you'd toss into a tip jar without thinking twice. But this one nearly disappeared into the shadows of everyday life. And yet, when it finally came to light, it shook the coin collecting world to its core, because it wasn't worth 10 cents. It was worth $1.5 million. The story begins in 2015, inside the walls of the Philadelphia Mint. Millions of Roosevelt dimes were being struck, flawless and ordinary. But somewhere, in the blur of machinery and molten metal, something went wrong, terribly wrong, or perhaps perfectly right. A microscopic flaw was born, one so rare, so unexpected, that it would turn a humble dime into a treasure worth more than most houses. Collectors call it a once-in-a-lifetime strike. Dealers whisper about it like it's a legend. But here's the truth, it's real. And the lucky person who first found it didn't even know what they had. They thought it was just spare change until a sharp-eyed collector noticed the impossible, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The dime carried a subtle but powerful secret. A minting error so small, you could hold it in your hand 100 times and never see it unless you knew exactly what to look for. Some say it was a double die. Others swear it was a planchet mix-up, a coin struck on the wrong metal. But whatever it was, it transformed a 10-cent coin into $1 million miracle. Auction houses scrambled to verify it. Experts lined up, magnifying glasses in hand, examining every millimeter. And when the official appraisal came in, jaws dropped. The grading was nearly perfect. The error, flawless. The market value? An earth-shattering $1.5 million. Dealers were stunned. Collectors went into a frenzy. And suddenly, everyone began checking their pocket change. But here's the thing, this coin isn't just a fluke of metal and machinery. It's a story about luck, timing, and the sharp eyes of those who never stop looking. The man who sold it was no millionaire before this, just an ordinary American, living day to day. But one dime, one tiny piece of silver-colored metal, changed his life forever. And here's where it gets even more unbelievable. Whispers began spreading in the collecting community. Could there be more? If one slipped out of the Philadelphia Mint in 2015, could others still be hiding, in drawers, jars, purses, or even stuck between couch cushions? The thought alone sent a shockwave of excitement across the country. Some collectors claim to have found cousins of the $1 million dime, similar errors, less dramatic but still worth thousands. Others insist the original was the only one. The truth? We may never know, unless you're the next person to stumble across one, but the real kicker is this: finding one isn't impossible. You just have to know the signs, the Philadelphia Mint mark, the year 2015, and that elusive error. On some of these dimes, the lettering is doubled, a ghostly shadow of each word. On others, the edge of the coin is slightly misshapen, a whisper of the machinery's misstep. And in the rarest cases, the coin was struck on a planchet meant for a completely different denomination, making it not only unique, but priceless, and yet, most people miss it. They hand it over at the gas station. They drop it in a vending machine. They never know they were holding a fortune between their fingers. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Yours could too. Imagine this: you're at the grocery store, you get your change, and there it is. Ordinary to everyone else. But to you, it's a ticket to a new life. A small, shining reminder that treasures don't always hide in dusty chests or buried beaches. Sometimes, they're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice. But here's the challenge: the odds are slim. And yet, every time a rare coin like this surfaces, it proves the impossible is possible. It tells every coin hunter, every curious soul, that today could be the day you make history. So the next time you get a dime with a 2015 date and a Philadelphia P Mint mark, stop. Look closely. Check the details under bright light. Tilt it. Study the edges. Look for anything doubling, misstrikes, strange metal color. Because hidden in those tiny imperfections could be the key to your $1 million story. Collectors were shocked. Dealers are still searching. And somewhere out there, another one of these dimes